moderate our first panel discussion with a very interesting topic. Entering the Metaverse ecosystem is one of the founding members of ISOG and the current assistant treasurer of the organization. He is more than he has more than 10 years of information security governance and management experience, and currently the Chief Information Security Officer and Head of Information Security Department of the Philippine Veterans Bank. Prior to this, he also assumed as a CISO and Data Protection Officer of the Philippine Bank of Communications and Development Bank of the Philippines. And on top of that, on top of his information security and privacy management experience, he is also equipped with 17 years of internal auditing experience. Ladies and gentlemen, may we call on Mr. Alvin Punsalan. Hi, sir. Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, world. I'm doing fine, Angela.
Yes.
Honestly, I feel great. It's really a sort of, a mixed emotion for me, excited and elated at the same time, considering this is the first of the four series of the ISOG Metaverse Summit that is happening now up to end of the year. So thanks for asking. So how about you?
I'm doing good. I'm gaining a lot of information from this webinar, which I am truly grateful for. And of course, for your session today, entering the metaverse ecosystem, it's very timely. But can you give us an overview about this before we call our panelists, Sir Alvin?
All right. Well, Angela, for me, I view metaverse, as the next big thing or evolution of the digital access, or what we call the digitalization. Now imagine this, doing things in a virtual realm or environment wherein all services could be accessed in a centralized universe. That would be awesome, right? But then again, safety measures should be in place in order to preserve what we call the CIA, or the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information and the information systems therein. So in a nutshell, metaverse is a concept that lays the foundation for attached virtual ecosystem in the future. Angela?
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for that. And of course, not to keep our audience waiting. I'm sure everyone is looking forward to this discussion. So let me call back on our virtual stage, Mr. Denis Sanchez, the Chief Information Security Officer of Trends and Technologies. We also have Hans Barre, the Director of Sales Engineering of Psychognito APAC. And of course, Paul Prantilla, the Director of IT Operations, Red Rock Security. Take it away.
Okay. Before we start, once again, may I reiterate that, for our participants to start jotting down your questions on the Q&A or chat tab. You know, by doing that, so you will have a chance to win an ISOG exciting door prizes. So once again, participate, be educated, and at the same time, chance to win our prizes. So to our panelists, are you ready? Mr. Denis, Mr. Hans, and Mr. Paul? So let's begin. So for the first question, let me throw in the first one. What do you consider as the most critical mindset that organizations have to adopt in order to keep pace with the events brought about by the metaverse ecosystem? So let's start off with Mr. Denis. Would you like to start answering this?
Okay, thank you, Alvin.
Okay.
All right, so what would be the first thing that should be in the minds, right? Of course, coming from a security perspective, we always like to think that everything is hackable,
Yes.
and nothing is really secure. We do have a lot of solutions and technologies available to mitigate the risks, but it can't be, there's really no single bullet, or there's no one single solution for everything. So we just need to be very careful and make use of whatever technology available to keep everything secure. And it starts off with again, like you said, the mindset. So everybody should always be on their toes when they're dealing in the metaverse.
All right.
Mm.
So, Mr. Hans, would you like to share your views on this?
Yeah, great. Thank you for the question.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I completely agree. You know, this is one of those things where this idea of the metaverse is truly a microcosm of our own
Correct.
physical world today, right? You know, so when you look at the world today as it exists, well, what elements of the world that exist today will carry over into this virtual space, right? And so the same threats that exist here today, you know, we will have the opportunity to sort of change the way that we deal with these threats, and in that space, having maybe more control over certain variables, while the space is overall going to be more decentralized. But again, we can expect to see a lot of the same issues in our modern physical world, you know, also in this metaverse. So what that gives is the opportunity to get ahead of these things and to take certain precautions and put controls in place that maybe we just didn't have with the current evolution of the internet, right? That we live and enjoy, you know, today.
Would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, definitely. Just want to make sure first if you guys can hear me well.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
Clear, clear.
Yeah, yeah, I want to build up on what Hans and Dennis said. So, like currently as of itself right now, it's mostly a concept, like a concept from its early definition of a 3D world where you'll have your avatars on it. It's been initially realized by things like Second Life and similar games, but to take that to the next level where you have access to real life equivalents in this quote unquote metaverse, that's still a concept as it is. The biggest barrier to that right now, well, from what I see, is that there's there are several metaverses. There's no the metaverse yet. I mean, that part is still evolving, and one barrier for that concept to become a reality, because right now if you ask 20 different people of what the metaverse is, you'll have 20 different answers.
Yeah.
They just have that common denominator of a virtual reality accessible by these devices like Oculus, HoloLens, um, yeah, and whatnot. But the main problem right now is the lack of standards for all of that interaction together. They're mostly proprietary driven. There is such a thing called OpenXR right now that serves as the API framework for interactivity or sharing experiences via APIs, but that's still a work in progress. I'd say that's where the IT security community has to get in. If this thing is going to blow up, that's one of the first things to start. You need a secure protocol. And moving on to what Denis said, well, and also Hans mentioned, where this will definitely add an additional complexity. You'll have that whole overlay of software plus new devices on top of services. For the current services that are already like that, a good example is Axis Infinity. That's a mobile game that's really, really popular in the Philippines, and they've monetized it by injecting it with or having it use Ethereum. That has been recently hacked, and that's one of the biggest crypto-related hacks as of late. So you could already see the dangers of having this, of incorporating real-life equivalents in a virtual or even just a mobile game. So that's the challenge moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, so true. I agree to that. You know, guys, the first thing that pops into my mind when I heard this word metaverse is the Matrix movie. You know, something similar to that, that you can, it's almost a reality, a different a universe, almost a reality that in the end, it could eventually, you know, you could use your life, you know, on it. You know. All right, so let's move to the Q&A tab or the chat box, and let's see some of the questions of the participants. Let's start off with the first one. provided by Mr. John Manansala. So here's the question. More on regulators. Okay, the question is, do you have an idea if the regulators now are ready for the metaverse, the impact of it in the digital world? So, anyone, guys, would you like to comment on that?
I'll take a first go at it. You know,
go ahead, Ans.
Regulators are often behind the curve, right? You know, so you have the demand from the market, you know, which is motivating a lot of energy, a lot of activity, and then you know, later you'll typically see some type of you know, general guidelines around how, you know, how industries are going to be regulated, right? Just kind of like bumper guards, nothing too strict, but you know, more general guidance. Now, you know, I see the same thing happening here. You know, if we use history as a bit of an example, you know, to guide us, you know, with this question, that's exactly what will happen, right? You know, so it's, you know, the regulators have never been known to be super in touch with reality, with technology either, right? You know, it's a bit of an afterthought in most cases. So it'll be the same here, where there'll be general cybersecurity and overall technology risk, you know, guidelines. But the balance there is, how do you keep it a safe environment, you know, with regulations and also just human safety, while at the same time not sort of stagnating growth and the overall what it's going to become next, right, in the early stages. So nobody wants to slow that down, especially when there's so much investment being made in so many different areas, whether it's, you know, Goldman and Sachs investing, or it's all these different platforms and Microsoft and Meta, and even the, you know, governments and militaries investing in this space. Yeah. Nobody wants to slow that down by any means, but we will see some early framework of governance, you know, in this space, just like we have with other technology areas.
Mr. Denis, would you like to add something on that, insofar as readiness of our regulators is concerned?
Yeah, well, honestly, we've seen it in the past, right? The laws, and just like what Hans said, they always come at a later time, after a risk has been realized, after, you know, a real attack has taken place. And I think really what it falls on those companies that would implement the solution or the space where people can jump into the metaverse to come up with policies. Because, you know, I don't want to, you know, look down on the government, but the truth is, you know, they're at a place where it really takes time for all these regulations to come. So we, the computing community, especially the private companies who will be implementing these technologies, should be the ones creating policies, and we cannot rely on the government, you know, alone.
Yeah, that's true. Mr. Paul, I know that you have a lot of, you know, clients right now, insofar as our RedRock service is concerned, but your thoughts insofar as the readiness of our regulators is concerned. What do you think?
Well, yeah, my first input to that would be, what do we exactly regulate? I mean, it's still not very tangible yet. It's still mostly a concept, and I mean, we don't even have that standard, those standards that I mentioned. How do we get this virtual world where different services get to interact with each other? And already having a minimal sort of interaction opens up a kind of worms, right? Like the example I gave earlier with Axis Infinity. I'd like to add on to what Ralph also said. Like, regulators aren't known to be exactly on the cutting edge, and even right now, because for example, we do work a lot with mobile applications that deal with financial transactions. That by itself has a lot of issues. We rarely, and I'm sure a lot of the APT providers can relate. we rarely assess a mobile application with that passes on its first try. There are lots of vulnerabilities even with that minimal scope. So if you blow that scope up, you essentially increase the attack surface. That provides a lot of more problems in the long run. So I'd say that's the number one problem. Regulators, they're definitely not equipped yet because there's nothing concrete to regulate. Once there is something concrete to regulate, it's all the more even complex. It's more complex than your typical web app and services. And those by itself are typically have their own challenges already when being regulated. So yeah, short answer would be, yeah, it would be a challenge.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, okay, moving on. Here's another question from Mark. So here it is. How it will ensure that this, meaning the metaverse, will be seamless and real time? Will this have an impact on our current internet providers' capability and capacity? So, Sir Dennis, what do you think on this?
Mm, uh, well, there's gonna be a really big impact on the services side, I guess, because of the you need to have the ability to monitor and see everything happening if we want it to be secure.
Mhm.
And honestly, I can't really answer like what Paul was saying.
Yeah.
You know, it's because the whole thing is still quite a concept. It's not completely realized.
Yeah.
So there are more things that we will discover along the way.
Okay.
Are we ready? Well, you know, when the internet first came in, you know, when it first came up, we were not ready at all, right? And again, I'm coming from a security perspective. We learn along the way. So there's going to be a really big impact now that there are companies trying to make use of it, and there will be more once it's completely realized and everybody in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So here's another question. Probably we could read the question of Pasquinel Rendal. He asked that how important blockchain technology and Web3 in the metaverse. So, Mr. Hans, would you like to comment on this?
Sure. So of course, when it comes to businesses who want to capitalize, on the metaverse, have a storefront, provide services, all of this is achievable, right? With what the idea of the metaverse is today. So then, of course, what does that mean? Do they, in a decentralized, environment where you have some major players who are participating and crafting what this is going to look like in the beginning, but then from there, there's still, it's still the Wild West. You'll still have some alternate ways of just existing in this space. But again, at the foundation, there will still be services, goods and services exchange, so on and so forth. So of course, the early idea, and I think this is one of Meta's ideas, is to have like a virtual digital currency called Mana, right? And so that's some of the initial ideas that are being shared around. But the overall concept, is a sound concept where what's the currency going to be? What's the foundation going to be? How do you tie our current financial system, whatever that is, if it's cryptocurrencies, if it's the fiat, systems in different countries, into this new augmented world, this augmented reality world to actually transact. So if blockchain is that, then I think many people would be happy, right? Because now it's a chance to sort of to change the game a bit, right? Have this, this distributed ledger really be foundational within this space. So yeah, so the answer is yes and no, right? I think it's, to Paul's point earlier, we still don't know what this is yet. It's a general concept that a lot of people are putting money into. But what it actually becomes next is what the people make it. And that's kind of an exciting thought.
Agree. Okay, another question. Let's hear it. Question from Rick's son. Rick, hi Rick. Here's the question of Rick. In the opinion of the presenters, can we apply the same security frameworks like the ISO, the NIST, the CIS on the security layers of the meta to keep the security posture of the companies, you know? So, Mr. Paul,
Yeah.
your thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, generally, yes. Thinking about it, so if you guys are familiar with the CIS critical security controls, so it's version 8 right now. There are 18 controls.
Wow.
There are controls there that target the layers that I see in a potential metaverse. But to provide a bit more context there, and this is also related to the question that Dennis answered.
Yeah.
The thing about the metaverse is that, take Steam and Valve, for example, right? If you think of a metaverse, you're thinking, okay, there are headsets, there are VRs. That's the ultimate goal. For Steam, for example, you have your Steam platform, and then you have your Steam VR on top of that, because the Steam VR is specifically for connecting to your headsets. And then you have your Valve Index headset. And the Steam VR is also, as far as I believe, it's also compatible with Oculus. All right. So how many more layers did that just add to your typical security stack that we have in your your contemporary services right now? That's a lot. You have your, okay, fine, your headsets are Android based, but it has more code definitely than your regular Android device, right? And so all in all, that expands your vulnerability surface. So that means that there are more, if we don't need more controls from a future version of your CIS, definitely we need to expand the context of the current controls for that, because there's a lot more going on than your typical web service and the like. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say for that.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Another question from Marielle. As a data privacy officer, what are the skills that I need to have in order to monitor and ensure compliance when our company does business in the metaverse? So, Mr. Dennis, any thoughts on this?
Well, number one, if you're the data privacy officer, you have to make sure you're the person that the government will rely on, right? So
Agree, yeah.
so you're very accountable. So make sure that you're not negligent. And make sure all the people, from the data custodians to anybody who touches the data, are all on it. Are all in it when we talk about handling data securely. So um, make sure you just go through all the guidelines that the National Privacy Commission came up with, and you should be set.
Yeah.
But thinking about how it actually affects the risk, it does have an impact, a positive impact in keeping it secure, but you still can't rely on whatever the the guidelines tell you. This is like best best effort, or I would say uh, consideration, like like uh, like hygiene. You do things like you brush your teeth, but it doesn't mean that you get to an accident, you will not break, right? So so the guidelines are good, coming from National Privacy Commission, but it really starts with the culture of your company. So as much as you can, you want to educate everyone in your organization to be very careful, not to a point that you're paranoid, but just make sure that everything is well taken care of, and everybody is in it. Only takes one weak link on the security chain, for the data to be stolen. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Make sure that everybody is, in it when you implement security policies to make sure the data is secure.
Yeah, yeah. I agree, Dennis. For me, being a former DPO, no, the primary consideration really is the protection of the PII and the SPI, right? So, the DPO should have really the responsibility to follow that particular information in any other platform, in any other universe. So that's it. Basically, protection of the PII. So, moving on. Another question from Edison Dungo. Hi, Edison. Uh, with identity theft being prevalent nowadays, with actual physical personality, despite the risk mitigation stated, can we further improve security and or protection of individuals in the metaverse world? So, Mr. Hans, would you like to comment on this?
I think this is a constant struggle, right?
Yep.
To and if you pay attention to the news now, Elon Musk is trying to buy Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And so it's super interesting, right? One of the world's richest guys is trying to be the bastion for free speech, on a popular tech platform. But then, of course, the next headline that comes out is, whoa, only if you reduce the number of fake accounts down below a certain percentage, right? So that's always been the suspicion, when every social media platform is birthed onto the internet, the way that value is gauged is participation. And then, of course, with participation, underlying the value there is how many people, are on that platform every day, whether it's Twitter or Facebook and I imagine any of the early platforms within the metaverse are going to be gauged in a similar way. How many interactions are happening there? Are these real interactions or are these bots, right? Are these just, bots being dispersed into the metaverse that are not real people, right? So that's always a concern. And until that nut is cracked, then the concept of, identity theft and sort of imposters or fake actors within these virtual spaces are going to always exist because they're allowed to exist. It's almost condoned behavior. So then, of course, how do you get around that? But again, this offers an opportunity for companies to really come up with solutions, to try to crack this issue, right?
Yeah.
If you can assign a real, value to a real person and have that be authenticated in some way, again, maybe even going back to the blockchain kind of, in discussion there, then it's a great opportunity for someone to actually come up and actually contribute to the overall conversation.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, Alvin, I'd like to add to that as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. There's one more unique threat that I see that's inherent in the concept of the metaverse as well, when it that adds on to identity theft. It's interesting because for Second Life, for example, there was a problem with sexual harassment because and that's kind of logical because the more people get to interact on a medium where that is more immersive, there are less barriers for them to do things like this. And the way I relate it with current cybercrime right now, specifically phishing. In phishing, it's a psychological game where someone, a scammer, wants you to do something. They try to gain your trust to click on a link or go to a website. There are more ways to do that. There are more ways to scam if you are in this immersive world, right? And if you're in this immersive world that has an interface with Ethereum or an interface with whatever, the stakes are a bit higher. It's not anymore just phishing going through an inbox. It's now interactions, a lot more interactions and possibilities for scamming, and a lot more ways to do that. it's not just clicking a link anymore. You could do whatever in a metaverse, right? Again, you're wearing all of the vision. The end vision is everyone is wearing all of these Oculus. They're in this world that's an evolution of like Facebook Horizon. It's pretty boring right now, but I imagine that as the years go on, you go closer and closer to that. So that's where that will all take us. Yeah. So I'd like everyone in the audience here to give to think about that.
Yep.
Right. What that could bring.
Mhm. Yes, agreed on that, Mr. Paul. I think there is a quick question. I think this is for Dennis. For trends of Fortify, does it cover the entire ZTA framework? That is identity, device, network, data, application, as a cloud service?
Yes, there's actually multiple solutions in it, and the idea is to uh, put it all together so we can monitor everything. So it starts with that, and then of course there's encryption. There's different solutions from
Mhm.
the application level all the way to the perimeter. I
Yeah,
mean, from the perimeter all the way to the back end.
yeah.
So it's a really complete solution,
Solution,
and
yeah.
actually I would say it's going to be something that would be tailor fit to whatever your organization need. It's going to be quite long if I'm going to discuss all the technicalities that are involved in there. But again, the zero trust framework is something that it will be implementing, which means we get to monitor and see everything and try to uh, control everything through policies as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Dennis. There's this one interesting question. I think let Paul answer this. Here's the question: will the metaverse be taught to the new generation of the youth, and how will they adapt and follow these guidelines? Mr. Paul, being an educator, would you like to comment on this? Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
I don't think they would need to be taught the same way, oldies like me didn't need to be taught to get into MIRC. I wonder if people know about that. I mean, they'll just get into it. um, However, but that said, what has to be taught and deliberately taught is to how to use it in a secure way. I always talk about this during speeches where we were never taught by our parents how to behave on the internet, how to behave safely on the internet. Like we were taught not to accept candies from strangers or not to just, talk to some weird guy on a dark street. But that's not. But doing that equivalent on the internet as it is right now, that's just not being taught,
mm,
right?
yeah, right.
So I imagine that the problem will be exacerbated when we come to a concept of a metaverse where, again, we have this immersive world where all real life services have their counterparts here through standards that don't really exist. Okay, I mentioned OpenXR, but that's a long way off.
Yeah.
So that one has to be taught. And if going by what we've noticed for the past few years, if people don't deliberately teach that, then it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that won't happen unless deliberately done. That safe behavior part.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well said. Well
Uh,
said, Prof.
Alvin, I would like to
Yeah.
add what
Yeah. Go
Paul
ahead. Go
said.
ahead. Yeah.
Well, by the way, Paul, you just gave away our age talking about MIRC.
I just
Anyway,
looked it up in Wikipedia.
oh,
Actually,
okay,
I
okay.
don't know what it is.
Okay. Well, because you brought up, children, the youth, and the truth is, yeah, like what Paul was saying, that they're learning it by themselves, just like how we were learning it ourselves during our time, and I want to bring it up since we're talking about risks and threats, that there's actually a lot of danger now that there's a lot more somewhat metaphysical things that are happening, right? Like, for example, if you guys are familiar with the game Roblox,
Yeah.
and it's not just the preparation of our youth on the technical side, but really on the mental side as well. Their mental health. I've been witnessing, children having mental issues, and some of them, coming back crying, saying that they got scammed.
Yeah.
And there are things that the characters, the avatars themselves do that are quite inappropriate, and will be exposing the youth. So imagine what our world is right now, where our youth is really, immersed into the internet and in social media, and how it affects them. So that's a very important part, that when we start educating people, is
Yeah.
that we make sure that we talk to them about the parts that are not really on the technical side, but more on the social, the
Yeah.
mental, and maybe spiritual side. So especially with all emotions, involved in a world that you're like fully immersed in. So that's just one thing that I want to get out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. Okay, here's another question coming from Ian Antonio. Since the metaverse will mostly use cryptocurrencies, probably insofar as settlement is concerned, will cryptocurrencies be regulated in the future? Mr. Hans, would you like to answer this?
I think we're already starting to see that now, right? So in the beginning, cryptocurrencies were demonized, right? Bitcoin was associated with crime, right? And then there was this explosion of crypto, and then you had all these coins, and so now, and then later, then Facebook at the time came up with their own coin. And then you started to see all of these organizations get behind the idea of a digital currency, their own digital currency, to try to kind of corner the market and kind of create these mini monopolies behind their own coins. And then back to the regulator question. Then years later, regulators started to catch on to this idea and say, okay, well, this is really happening. We need to be present and actually start to try to put some structure around how these things are used. And that's what we see today, right? We see different tax, the tax organizations in relevant countries starting to put, guidelines behind the capital gains around these things. So of course, the next natural step is the financial system will continue to protect itself, and drive a lot of that regulation and just structure with how cryptocurrencies are going to be regulated. So I mean, we're starting to see it already, right? It's happening right in front of our very eyes. So if by the time Metaverse becomes mature to the point where it's able to transact and actually allow funds to flow, whether it's Ethereum or whatever the coin of the day is in that moment, then I suspect the regulatory environment will be mature enough to allow it to happen. So I think it'll happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that, Hans. Okay. Another question coming from Melody in the chat box. So, what are the means to prevent meta phishing? Are there any known software or tools currently available to avoid this risk? So, Dennis, in your shop, do you have this? Do you have this already?
I'm sorry, can you repeat again the question, please?
The question is, what are the means to prevent meta phishing? Are there any known software or tools currently available to avoid this risk?
Yeah, okay. So, meta phishing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's actually a lot of solutions uh, to alert us if there's a possible phishing, happening. Usually, it's more like monitoring behavior of sites that are being accessed, and even monitoring sources of communication
Mhm.
from dubious or suspicious areas or
Yeah, yeah,
suspicious locations, right?
yeah,
That won't be enough. I would say the best solution still would be education,
yeah,
and teaching your people what are the signs of somebody phishing,
yeah.
because maybe in different forms. You
Mhm.
know, it could be through an email, it could be a
Yeah,
pop-up link, it could be on a website,
yeah,
and seeing all these ads, and they could even be something that looks very natural or normal in the common conversation, but then somebody's actually trying to extract information from you. So there's a lot of information that you really always have to give out right away in order to join whatever uh, technology or solution that is out
yeah,
there you want to make use of.
yeah,
It's like when you register for an event, and join these things. So you have to make sure that before you go in or work with that organization, you want to verify if that organization is a legitimate company. You want to ask, if there are solutions that are in place, and you want to read the fine print, on who's going to be, sharing, or where are they going to be using the information that you just gave in. So phishing could really come into multiple forms, and even us, the best of us, we could actually still be tricked into it. So you want to be like what I said earlier. You want to be on your toes.
yeah,
You want to be educated with what are the ways people do phishing. Okay, so the organizations must really spend time to teach,
mhm,
educate, make sure that there's an awareness program, and even test their people
yeah.
if they're ready. So that's the best protection against this phishing. It's really education, awareness, and I always say training.
Correct. Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, agreed,
Yeah,
agreed on that, Denis.
yeah.
Anyone? Comments?
Alvin,
Yeah,
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 I wanna add to that too. So first, yeah, I'm just curious about the term meta phishing because
yeah,
it implies that there's this single
yeah,
metaverse already out there.
yeah,
Just to
yeah,
clarify, we don't have
yeah,
that yet.
yeah,
It's still a concept that's ongoing. Now that said, there are services like what I mentioned, Second Life, Facebook Horizons,
mhm,
that may be a metaverse,
yeah,
right? But it's still basically isolated,
yeah,
where things akin to phishing could happen. But we have to recognize that phishing is as much a psychological attack as it is a technological one. So I encourage people to not only think of phishing as something that can be prevented by a technology. Yes, they exist, right? But like what Dennis said, it's mostly education that becomes our armor against things like this. Phishing in a metaverse won't take the form of a phishing email. It will be in the form of interactions from a stranger trying to get information from you, trying to gain your trust in an obtuse way. That's what we have to look at the attack as it is. So the best counter to that is not some magic tool. It's education. What I mentioned a while ago. It's we need something where we have the equivalent of our parents telling us, saying, you know, in this application, don't just speak to strangers. Again, in Second Life, there were sexual harassment problems, right? So that's what we need to do. Yeah.
yeah. All right. So I guess I guess that's it. So before we end this panel discussion, one last word for you guys, insofar as for the world entering into the metaverse ecosystem. So, anyone, Mr. Hans, one last word.
I think at this point, we don't know what we don't know about the metaverse. There's so many different players who want to make this a success, right? They want this to be the next evolution of the way that we interact in a digital way. And there's so much investment that's being made, and the momentum is starting to pick up now. that, you know, you can almost see an oasis, a utopia in the future, but you can also see a bit of a train wreck in the future too, right? So I think we're all going to experience that, and we're all going to be a part of the journey, and we're either going to help shape it into that utopia, or we're going to be a part of its demise, right? So it's again, it's an exciting time to be here and a part of this, because we're all a part of it, you know, and so it's rather interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah, so true. Mr. Dennis?
So again, the metaverse is something that we really believe that is coming, or I would say it's already here, and technology is already prepared. It's just that us, the humans, are we really prepared, and how quickly can we adapt to it? When we started the internet, we were like, it's very fancy, back in the early 90s maybe, but we felt like we won't need that. We have our newspapers to get our news. We have our rotary analog phones to communicate, and said, who needs the internet? But now we rely on it. So I'm looking at the metaverse as something that we may be, using, very possibly in the future, like it's part of our lives, like it's an extension of our bodies. So what we should really do, is more than just have the courage, is again, make sure we prepare ourselves. It's like when you're going to war, you're going to a location that you're probably not so familiar with, but preparation is key. So before it comes, if you're going to be an organization, you're going to be implementing this, you're going to be a user, then study it. Again, me and Paul probably preach education a lot because we're educators, but honestly, we're humans too, and we could be victims too.
Correct.
So, yeah, prepare for it.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Paul, last word.
Yeah, well, um, I guess a part of me that is thinking that it's a bit of a long way off, because for that, because right, if we think about metaverse, that originally came from a novel or a movie, Snow Crash, where you had people wearing these goggles, entering this virtual world. So imagining the Earth like that, a part of me is saying that that's still a long way off. But then again, a part of me is saying that that's what we initially thought about cell phones, right? Now everyone has a cell phone. So from an IT security practitioner's perspective, it's still something we have to prepare for. I think education is really the biggest tool. I mean, there's a lot of confusion going on with technology. Things like NFTs, for example, things like blockchain. A lot of people are using that without, and getting hyped about it without really knowing what they're getting into. I mean, NFTs, they're basically just glorified receipts, right? But people are eating it up. So that's gonna drive or accelerate this direction towards the metaverse. But like what Hans mentioned, we don't know the exact form it's gonna take shape. It's just a concept right now. But regardless, for an IT security practitioner, this means a lot of complexity coming no matter what. I described a while ago additional elements in that technology stack, right? So it's just going to expand the attack surface a bit more. So yeah, well, I guess security practitioners have a lot of on their hands, work on their hands.
Okay, thank you very much. So there you have it. Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Dennis, Mr. Hans, and Mr. Paul, for the wonderful insights that you have shared to our attendees, and at the same time for sharing your expertise in this Metaverse I Am Secure 2022. So thank you very much.